The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket.
President Trump's first speech to the United Nations General Assembly was one to remember, certainly threatening to, quote, totally destroy North Korea, as you heard him, if it continues to threaten America and its allies, while also calling out Iran and Venezuela. With me now to break all of this down is Dr. Lee Hanna, an assistant professor of political science at Wright State University. I first want to ask you, was this speech what we expected from the president?
Yes, I think in some ways there was maybe something for everyone in this speech. In terms of his start was very much what I would call kind of a typical presidential address. He lifted up these nations, this ability to collectively solve problems internationally, and then he transitioned in a way that was consistent with how he campaigned, this America First message. He used the word sovereignty 21 times, and many times defending kind of the United States' role as a sovereign nation, how he will always look out for our country's interest first. And then he became, he used some fairly aggressive language towards North Korea, Iran, Venezuela. And in that way, really broke from traditional speeches that we've seen, certainly from our president. So in that way, very different.
And that aggressive language, he called North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, Rocket Man. And you heard him in that video earlier that he's on a suicide mission at this point. Could this incite things with Kim Jong-un at this point? Yes, and that is such a difficult conflict to predict. It's one that has really puzzled the United States for 70 years now. And Kim Jong-un has been particularly aggressive, and he's really sped up his nuclear program to the extent that he is going to flinch and back down. I think that's really anyone's guess at this point. And you would hope that as President Trump's making these speeches, there is a team in the background that knows, or at least has an educated guess as to what type of message will resonate and get the best diplomatic outcome. Something I just thought of, but what type of message do you think that there was when two of North Korea's representatives didn't even show up yesterday? Yes, and a sign of kind of this lack of respect and these tensions that have gone on for decades now. President Bush put North Korea on the axis of evil. So it's certainly it's a story that continues to evolve, and I do think this most recent dictator has been probably more aggressive than even his predecessors. But it's very hard to predict. And what was interesting is President Trump did come back around. As much as he talked about America first, he also was trying to pull China and Japan and South Korea into these negotiations to try to get a better outcome. And there are many who argue that there are some countries that could push the North Korean government more into a direction that would be beneficial to everyone. Why do you think the president used such harsh words, not just with North Korea, but even Iran? I mean, calling their government, quote, corrupt dictatorship behind a false guise of democracy. Yes, and that of course is some fallout from the Iran deal, which was criticized pretty heavily from the right. And in some ways, it is consistent with how he has been as a leader. He has been unpredictable. He has been more aggressive. He has been less polished and more kind of explicit in the way that he makes some threats, whether that's with political enemies at home or abroad. So often when I watch these, I think what part of this speech is playing to a base, what part of the speech is trying to move an international audience in some direction, what part is trying to broader re-election constituencies, and it's pretty hard to tease out all of that. But it was unexpected in some ways in terms of how aggressive and how explicit he was to the countries. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Lee Hanna. We greatly appreciate you being here this morning. Great, thank you. Thank you.